Hi there. If you're familiar with Microsoft Intune and you're looking to introduce Autopilot as a way of provisioning your devices, then there are a number of options available to you. Windows Autopilot enables organizations to easily provision new devices, taking them from the OEM factory config to the ready for productive user state. But depending on the amount of software and policies that you need to configure on these devices, the provisioning process can take some time. This is where you might opt to use pre-provisioning, or what was previously known as White Glove. In this video, we're going to look at configuring the settings for Autopilot pre-provisioning, take you through that experience, and then do a demonstration of the enrollment and admin user experience. So let's have a quick look at the prerequisites here. We've mentioned the version, so Windows 10 version 1903 or later, or Windows 11. It can apply for Windows Pro license, Enterprise or Education editions. You will need an Intune subscription for this to work, and probably most important for this is you need a physical device that supports TPM2 and device attestation. So as it states here, virtual machines aren't supported. Now I have seen ways in which this has been done, but in the main I wouldn't recommend it. So try this out if you're trying this out initially on physical machines. You have to have an Ethernet connectivity. So that means you don't need to go through the options in order to set up Wi-Fi first. So we'll show that and see it working when we get to that point. So to begin with, we've hopped into the Microsoft Endpoint Manager Admin Center here for your tenant. Now the scenario we have for this demonstration, we have a physical laptop, which is a Windows 10 machine. And we're going to go through pre-provisioning of that device for a number of applications, a configuration file, and basically see that working. But we've got to set up the configuration within Intune. Now your standard setup for Intune is not covered within this video. See my getting started videos for that. So first off, we need to look at the devices that are registered. So for the devices that we're going to enroll or pre-provision, if I go into Windows Enrollment and then Devices, you'll see a list of the devices that have already been registered into your tenant. Now typically you can either do that yourself through capturing the hardware hash and importing that into your tenant, or typically when you're deploying large numbers of devices, this can be staged during the OEM manufacturing process, so they can gain access to your tenant and pre-register all these devices. So you'll see a list of all the available devices. Now the one we're interested in here is this one here. If I click that, you'll see I've got some details of this device. I can, if I want, I could put a device name in here. And also, if I wanted to, I can highlight that device and assign a user. Now I'm going to do that because the user we're going to assign is Alex, and we're going to log on eventually with that user, and we'll see through the experience it will personalize that experience for him. So we're going to select that. Save that. Okay, now the next thing we need to do is make sure that we've got a device group. So we've got to get our group set up. Now I've created two groups. First off, I've got a Windows provisioning device group, and the device that I just showed there, I've added it as a member into this group. Now it'll become apparent why I've done that in a minute, but if you remember, the pre-provisioning process is about building that device with the settings, configuration and applications that are dedicated to the device, not to the user, but they're assigned to the device. So we've got that in there. I'm also going to show you my user group. We'll get there eventually. Where we go, we've got the Windows provisioning users, and as you'll see, if I look at the members, I've got Alex in there. Okay, now the reason I've done that is because I'm isolating this particular demonstration and setup just for this one user and this one new device. Ultimately, you'll have your standard user groups, marketing, sales, or however you've structured your organization, and you'll assign these groups to that policy. So we've got our user group, we've got our device group, and also what we want to do is then set up and assign these this user and the device group to the relevant configuration and applications. Okay, so if I look at the applications, I go into Windows, there's two application bases that I've got here. So I've got a version of the Microsoft 365 apps, and I've got, as it says there, pre-provisioned devices. Now I know that these are the apps that are going to be assigned, because if I look at the properties, I've got the Windows provisioning devices group that I've just shown you, and as you can see, that is set under the required group mode there. I can also look at the actual applications that will be deployed as part of this. So if I look at the app suite configuration, and then the actual application, select Office apps. Here's the Office applications that will be pre-provisioned. Okay, so there's 5 of them. The other app I want to include here is a Win32 application, and I've included the 7-zip application. So if I go into that and look at the properties, now this is a Win32 application, but as you'll notice in here, it says that its install behavior is system. Now there is a distinction here. When you enroll under pre-provisioning, the device will be set up by assigning applications that are allocated to the specific device, but it will also include applications which are assigned to a user, but the installation behavior is under the system mode. So what we should expect is not only will we get the applications assigned to the device itself, but also any Win32 applications under system mode. Now there is a notice within documentation that will show that you shouldn't combine both Win32 applications and line of business apps during Autopilot. So we're not doing that here, but please note that that's something you should be wary of, because you can come across issues and errors in that scenario. Just to confirm, if I go down to the assignments here, you can see that I've got my Win provisioning users, and if you remember, I've got Alex assigned to that specific group. So that kind of concludes, basically we've got our device assigned configuration and our application, but we've also got our user assigned application here, which is a Win32. The last setting I want to show here, and arguably one of the most important, is the enrollment deployment profile. So if I go into Windows Enrollment, under deployment profiles, I've gone and set up an autopilot for pre-provisioning. So if you remember when we first described this, pre-provisioning is a user-driven policy. For this particular example, the device is only going to be Azure AD joined, so we're not going to go through the hybrid scenario here. I've preset the language to English. The automatic keyboard is set to yes. I've hidden the software license and the privacy settings and change account options. The actual account is standard, so we're not giving that user any admin access. And what's quite key is I've set the allow white glove out of box experience to yes. Now you need to do that. That's going to be quite an important one, because obviously despite it's now renamed as pre-provisioning rather than white glove, we need to have that setting on. I don't have a device name template. And then lastly, obviously the device that we're going to demonstrate here is assigned to this Windows provisioning devices. So as soon as the device is connected and it links up to this tenant, it will pick it up as it's registered, and it will understand that it's been assigned to this deployment group, because that device is assigned to this Autopilot profile, and that device is already assigned within pre-provisioning devices. Now, it's probably worth me mentioning that when you set up initially set up this profile, you won't have any. If I look in assigned devices, I've got my specific device already in there, but until you assign this group to this pre-provisioning profile, Autopilot profile, it will take some time to actually populate the devices within this policy. The devices that are assigned are those that are already been added to the device group. So the cycle of events really is you register the device is assigned to a device group, you assign that device group to your Autopilot profile, and then once that happens, you will have to wait a few minutes, or possibly up to 10-15, I've seen it sometimes, where that device is then assigned. It's not until the devices are captured or registered within this policy that you can then go through the pre-provisioning process, because it wouldn't have picked that device up during the whole provisioning process. So we just pop back to the Microsoft website here, just to highlight a few points. So generally speaking, from pre-provisioning, there's the deployment supports two distinct scenarios. You've got the user-driven deployments with Azure AD Join, and user-driven deployments with hybrid Azure AD Join. Now, both of these consist of two parts, and that's a technical flow and a user flow. The technical flow being the technician or IT admin to set up, pre-provision the device, and then you've got the user flow section, which is basically the out-of-box experience. Okay, so within the documentation here, it will show a number of screens which are relevant for Windows 10. But effectively, you boot the device once from new, and then from the first UBI screen that you get, and it needs to be the first screen, rather than clicking next, instead you press the Windows key 5 times, and you'll get the options dialog. And from that point on, we will be we'll step through this Windows Autopilot provisioning. If I just go down here a sec, on the configuration screen, once you've done that, it's going to give you the Autopilot profile assigned to the device, the organization name, and the user assigned to the device, if there is one. There's one more setting that I forgot to set up here, and that's the ESP, or the enrollment status page. So let's hop over and get that configured now. So off the home screen of Endpoint Manager Admin Center, we're going to Devices, Windows Enrollment, and then the Enrollment Status page. Now you'll see I've got two policies in here already. You get the default one, and I've added another one which relates to another part of deployment. So it's got a higher priority, but it won't relate to our deployment here because it's not got the included groups. Whereas the default policy, if I look at the properties, you'll see it's included all devices. But the key thing here is that basically it's this will control, if you like, the enrollment, the status that will be updated to the end user as they enroll the device, even though it's the IT admin that's going to be doing this from a provisioning process. It does control in that you're blocking device use until all apps and profiles are installed. And that's quite important, because if we go over to the documentation and we look at some of the details here. As it says, the provisioning or the technical flow inherits behavior from self-deploying mode. Okay, and it uses the ESP to hold the device in a provisioning state, prevent the user from proceeding to the desktop after enrollment, but before the software and configuration is done applying. So if this is disabled, then the reseal button may appear before the configuration is done applying, letting you to proceed to the user flow. Now, we do not want this process to proceed to the user flow. We want to be able to see that reseal button so that effectively pre-provisioning can lock that machine back down and make it ready for the end user to complete the last steps. Okay, so finally we jump into the actual demonstration and put all this configuration to work. I've got a Windows 10 physical laptop, as I mentioned before, so I've connected that up, and we're going to go through this enrollment process or pre-provisioning. So to start off with, the machine has been booted, and it's automatically showing that it's got the welcome to move to modern, so it's the registered device is being picked up. And what we do here is we hit the Windows key 5 times, and then we go through pre-provisioning. So we're going to do that. Let me do that, and let's see it jump into pre-provisioning. So there you go. So automatically we've got 3 options, and we're going to pick Windows Autopilot provisioning, hit continue. It's going to go through a number of checks and downloads, and then it's going to configure this device with all the settings that have been set up for this device. Now, all told, this is going to take a few minutes, so at various points along this I'll speed this up just to get to the important bits, and I'll highlight that as we go along. So the first stage is complete. It's showing that it's the tenant that I've got. It's an Autopilot pre-provisioning, and we're going to hit the provision button. It will jump into the configuration settings or preparation. So we'll go through the device prep, then the setup. It will do a reboot of the machine, and then it hopefully, if fingers crossed, if all goes well, it will give us a reseal button and give us a green screen. So that shows us that we've completed pre-provisioning successfully. So at this stage, while this goes through the setup, I'll speed some of this up. So it's completed the first stage, and now it's going to go through the device setup stages. It's picked up that there are 2 applications to install. I mean, one of these will be the Office suite, if you remember the Office applications, and the other should be the 7-zip application, which we pointed out. Both of those because they're device allocations, and also they're installed under the system mode in the system context. So that's why you're seeing those 2 there, but the one of this refers to all the applications under the Office 365 suite. At this stage, the installation is completed. It's rebooted the machine, and hopefully, fingers crossed, it will now go and give us the option to reseal this device. And there you have it. We've got the green screen, so it's showing that that has successfully completed, and we can reseal the device, which effectively locks that machine down and allows us to put that into a ready position for the out-of-box experience from the end user. Now, in this situation, because all the applications have been installed, it does mean that hopefully that experience will be very quick for the end user. So that concludes the pre-provisioning of that Windows 10 device. The next stage is to go through the out-box experience from an end user perspective. If this part isn't useful to you, then please go ahead and skip this for now. So now that pre-provisioning was successful, I just hop back into the documentation again, and this time we want to look at the user flow. Before we do that, I just want to highlight that if pre-provisioning fails, you'll get a red status screen, and that will appear. Now you can collect the diagnostic logs, which can be gathered from the device, and then it can be reset to start the process over again. Hopefully you're not in that situation, but there are a number of errors that may occur, and we're not going to follow that in this video, but please notice that is a possibility, obviously. So in order to follow the user flow, we resealed that device, we've sent it out in the post to the end user, and they'll go through an out-of-box experience. So they'll power on the device, they'll select the language, locale keyboard, etc. And typically they're going to need to connect it to Wi-Fi as you would normally. If it's using a hybrid Azure AD join, and we haven't here, we've used an Azure AD only join. But if it was hybrid scenario, there has to be connectivity back to the domain controller. And in that scenario, once you kind of carry out your logon, the device, as it says here, will reboot. So that's a single additional step that you don't see. But what it will do once you've added your credentials, it will go through and basically deliver or download any additional policies and apps. Now in our scenario, we don't have any, so that should be fairly quick. But it will come up with the enrollment status page again in order to complete before you can log on to the desktop. Now there's this one last comment here which says a change was made 2021-09C, where basically this is adding an additional capability. So it's going to prompt the device to go through device as well as the user setup. So this allows you to add in the additional device configuration that you may have done in between sending this out to the end user. So it will capture those details. So hopefully in that way you're not missing any additional configuration you may have set up. So at this point what we're going to do is hop back into the device and go through the out-of-box experience. So I'm going to start up the device again with the out-of-box experience as the end user this time. It's going to kick in to prompt me to put my network in. Remember, I'm not on an Ethernet now. I'm following the scenario that I'm at home on Wi-Fi. So I'll select my Wi-Fi and connect to it. It's going to check what settings need to be updated, then it will kick into the ESP screen again to give us a status update of progress. So I'm prompted to put in my your username and then password here. What I would have expected, as we discussed up front, that this would have been auto-populated, so I'm not quite sure what's happened here. I'll have to go back and check this over, but I'm going to put my user ID in, then my password, and there you see at the ESP page. Now it's automatically ticked complete the device preparation because we've already been through that, which is a really good sign, and it's cut down on the amount of time it's going to take to set this device up. It's going to do some device setup. If you remember, it's going to check to see if there's any updates to security policies, etc. This can take a minute or two, depending on how many policies or additional policies have been set up. It's showing that there's one app installed, but that's just the completion of the user assigned application. And then it's going to kick in and start Windows 10 for the first time. Now that whole process ended in around about 3.5 minutes, which ordinarily, if you're installing Office applications along with other policies and settings, could take between 15 to 25 minutes. It's doing the last check against the user account if there's any additional policies assigned to the user. That's completed fairly quickly. Then there's no more apps to install, and then it's going to go through the setup phase as a user. So I'll skip through this phase pretty quickly because this is just you setting up the end device as an end user. It'll ask me for a PIN. Now this is down to the policies that are set on the device, and then it will tell me it's all set and done. So it's jumped straight into my Windows desktop, and I can go and have a look at the applications that have been installed. Hopefully we can see 7-Zip and Office Suite. Look at all apps. There you go, there's 7-Zip at the top, and you can see Excel there. We've got Teams, OneNote, Outlook. So we've got the applications that we were expecting. Teams automatically starts as standard. And then finally we can go into settings and just confirm the details of this device name. There's a device name policy assigned to this device. If I look at the about, I can see that there's the name ending R4C2. So the very last stage is to go into Endpoint Manager again. We're going to have a look at the device to make sure it's enrolled. There's the device there, 4C2. I can see that it's been logged on by Alex, which is correct, and I can look at the hardware associated with this, and there's the model and Lenovo, which is what I would expect. I can also look at the managed apps, for example, and there you see it. I've got the pre-provisioned devices, that applications that we applied, and the 7-Zip application. So thanks very much for watching the video. Hopefully that was useful for your own deployments. We've been through setting up pre-provisioning, Autopilot pre-provisioning, and demonstrating that on a physical Windows 10 device. Give it a go for yourself, and obviously you'll need to make a decision based on the policies and number of applications that you're deploying to your end users, and gauge it accordingly. Thanks very much. Subscribe and like this video if you'd like to see more. Thanks again.